Hey guys, welcome to the As the Leader Grows podcast. I am your host, Ken Joslin, and I've got a special guest with us today, the one and only GS Youngblood, author of The Masculine in Relationship. Listen, if you listen to my podcast at all in the last 3 months in my journey as a man in relationships, you have heard me talk about this guy's book. He's got another book out called The Art of Embodiment. We're super excited, bro. I'm excited to have you. We spent a little bit of time together talking prior to this podcast. But listen, guys, GS coaches men in relationship to live, love, and lead from their masculine core, which at 53 or 54 years old is like, have been so eye-opening for me, and I know hundreds and thousands of other men. GS, what's going on, my friend? How you doing, man?
Ken, thank you for having me on. I'm doing great, and I've been excited for this conversation, so I'm glad we're doing it today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. One of the things that we talked about earlier, and one of the things inside of my GSD community mastermind, our Create conference that we do in Atlanta, coming up at the end of the month with John Maxwell, Ed Milet, and a host of other friends, Roya Mattis, you know Roya real well, is we talk a lot about our core five. For me, it's faith, health, relationships, business, and finances. Faith, health, and relationships. And this is a theme in everything that I do with my community, with the people that I coach, is when you get your faith, your health, and your relationships in alignment, the business and the finances are almost organic. And you come at this, I think you come at this with a perspective that I've never really heard before about the masculine and being in alignment and polarity in relationships. Dude, I'd love for you to kick us off today and share a little bit about what you've got going on and what you're doing and your message to men and women.
Yeah, I'm totally in alignment with these 5 precepts that you talked about. You know, I've been there. I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley in hardcore tech jobs. And despite the fact that I was having a lot of financial and career success at the office, at home it was a mess. And my marriage at that time was crumbling down. And so I know firsthand the impact of when your relationship at home is not right, it's really going to affect your business at the office. And that's what happened to me. My performance at that time started to really go down relative to the prior 10 years. And it's something that I had to get through. It's something that I had to get through to really then fully recommit myself to my career. So that's where it all started for me. It was a marriage that ended 13 years ago and ended in a pretty big ball of flames. It was very painful for me at the time. And I was really left scratching my head of what went wrong. You know, I thought I was a decent looking guy. I thought I was a decently successful guy, a good human being, good father. And what I came to find is those things are not enough. And I have a lot of clients that think it is. Yeah. And what is missing are these relational dynamics. Sometimes polarity dynamics is how it's described. But it's this dance between masculine and feminine. And most guys don't understand this dynamic. It's really not something that they've ever been exposed to. But when I got exposed to it through David Daly's work, who my therapist at the time gave me his book, that's what kicked off my understanding of the masculine and feminine dynamics. So I just spent, now 15 years doing a lot of deep work in authentic relating. And that was a lot of my earliest training, and then moving into the men's work with David and other people. And along the way, I took lots of notes on what was working, what wasn't. I had subsequently gotten in a relationship with a very powerful woman who has a both powerful masculine and feminine. I mean, she's just sexy as hell, but she can bite your head off. I'm still.
Yeah, I have a girlfriend that that is the exact same way.
Yeah, I do. So we share that, and we're both in relationship with women who are powerful but have huge hearts. So how do we unlock that side? We don't we're not trying to subjugate their power. We're trying to unlock that feminine side. And that's really what I'm trying to do and help men with. And eventually all those notes turned into one book. And then my borderline obsession with embodiment work turned into the second book that you mentioned. And it was all something I lived every day. I think that's one thing that I'm proud to say about my work, is that I've pretty much lived through everything that I write about. Yeah. For better.
Isn't that the most authentic and those transferable principles when you share it from a pain point?
Yeah.
And an experience point? Isn't that when people look at it and go, "Oh wow, this is"? I think that's why your stuff is so impactful.
Yeah, I think men feel the realness of it, and I'm able to empathize what it's like and not give them these packaged answers that are more caricatures of masculinity rather than what actually works. Because here's the thing, there's a lot of men's work out there, and a lot of it is it's either in kind of like either super spiritual, it's alpha dog, or it's kind of like male apologist is what I call it, kind of the new agey kind of dude. And none of those really work, quite frankly, and particularly the alpha dog stuff, because what that misses is the relational piece. See, there's a whole power and purpose within me, but if I'm not relational as well, I'm just going to come off as a dick, and that act gets old pretty fast for most, heartful, feminine women. So, yeah, I think guys feel that when they work with me.
Talk to me about your journey. I mean, my marriage ended effectively about 3 years ago. I've been divorced for almost a year now.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your journey, GS, when you're doing the research, David Data, and you're looking at the masculine, the feminine, the polarity, some of the stuff we'll talk about shortly. When was the aha moment when you went, oh crap, I had a lot more to play in this? Here's the reason than I thought. Because no man that I know of, when their marriage falls apart, thinks, oh, this is on me.
Yeah, it's on me.
What was that moment for you?
Well, the moment, it was not a moment, of course, so I'll describe a phase in my life. Went from thinking I'm not lovable, desirable, not enough of X, Y, and Z, and that's why it failed, to, oh, there was a whole dynamic here that I didn't harness, mainly because I didn't have any idea about it. And I was able to then see clearly what was hers and what was mine, and then focus what was mostly on me. I didn't realize how much power I had, and it's one of the messages I have for guys. You are so much more powerful than you think, and not because of positive mental attitude nonsense. It's because your way of being largely determines what her way of being will be. So if she's in a bitchy mood, sometimes it's her mother, her sister, her work. Sometimes it's that, but often it's because she's not feeling connected to you. And so one of the things I'm teaching guys is how to be more in connection with their woman, and they're surprised as I was, of like, oh, she actually settles down when I'm more relational. And I didn't realize I had that power, and when I did, it was a holy shit moment for me.
So one of my biggest takeaways from your book, and I actually got a friend, we're recording this podcast, I've got a friend in town as well, and both of us, he actually listened for 4 hours in his car, his ride from Greenville, South Carolina over to Birmingham today. And his biggest takeaway was my biggest takeaway, that when you have an issue with your woman, when she's, because all women got a little crazy in them, not a ton, but a little crazy, and it's usually brought on by us. But when they have their moment, instead of reacting, giving them space to feel safe, and then responding to them, and watching how that affects their mood or where they're at or their countenance. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when our women come at us with fire, we generally have one of two reactions. One is, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I need to get out of trouble real fast so she'll stop being mad. And that's when we go defensive. And probably every guy and woman on this call knows exactly the impact of defensiveness. Or we need to fix it. It's our typical male fix-it kind of persona. We all get that. What she's wanting is she's actually wanting you to co-regulate her nervous system. And you do that through your own stillness, through presence, engagement, empathy, having her feel felt and understood in whatever is going on for her. When you do those things, you don't have to fix anything in most cases. And that's the fallacy of us guys. We think something needs to be either avoided or fixed. Sometimes the expression and the reception of her expression is what fixes it, is what brings her, well, in reality what's happening is she feels you receiving her and she feels felt, and then her nervous system naturally comes down. And this is very important, because if you try to defend or basically go informational, and she's in an emotional state, you guys are talking two different languages. You may as well be speaking Greek, because she's not going to understand. But when you make space for her in these ways that we just talked about, her nervous system comes down, and then at some point she becomes more available for a more informational-based discussion, a quote unquote rational discussion. But before that, it's premature and it never works. So I say to guys, you really got to meet her at that emotional space, co-regulate her, and then let her nervous system come down. And then so much more is possible once that happens.
What are some of the things you teach men? Like this situation, we've all been in it. I don't care if you're 16 years old and you've been dating a girl and you're in high school. We've all been in it. When we have an argument, girl goes from 0 to 100 in 2.3 seconds faster than a Ferrari.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you teach men? Some practical things that they can go, okay, when this is going on, my mind's going, okay, don't react the way that I want to, but do A, B, and C.
Yeah. Well, there's two tracks here to answer your question. One is cognitive, one is somatic. And I know you do somatic work, so you understand this. The number one thing you got to do is ground your nervous system over a long period of time of having a daily embodiment practice. And so the number one thing you can do is commit to a daily embodiment practice. And we can talk more about what that means if you'd like. That's the number one thing. Number two comes out of chapter 14 of the book, where I give a list, I've forgotten, but I think there's about 7 different things on the list of ways that you can be when your woman is fired up. And number one on the list is empathy. It's what we talked about. It's like just feeling what it's like to be her in this moment. Doesn't mean that her emotions are right or wrong or justified or not justified. She just wants to be felt the way she is. And the number one thing I've seen bring a woman's nervous system down and settle her is when she feels you feeling her. So it's not easy for guys. We don't feel naturally, and that's a lot of what the embodiment work really unlocks is the ability to just feel. And we can go maybe later in this conversation we can talk about what's the masculine way to really be able to feel these things. But I'll just bookmark that. Curiosity. Sometimes you actually have no idea what the hell she's talking about. And so curiosity is a powerful, like, oh, so when I said, X, you got triggered and felt upset about that. Am I getting that right, baby? Like there might be some lack of understanding that some curiosity might actually really help and actually make her feel good because she feels your sincerity and wanting to know her better. So those are 2. Humor's a third. Sometimes the emotional state on the other side is just ridiculous, and even they'll admit that, at times. And sometimes humor is what's called. You gotta, make light, a little levity. You can bust her chops a little bit because humor demolishes drama. And when used sparingly and at the right times, it's a great way to kind of shake her out. And then sometimes they're just like, thank you. You're right. I'm being ridiculous.
It's funny.
Humor helps see that.
You say that. And Roy and I had a conversation last week. We're on FaceTime because obviously it's a long distance relationship. I said something to her, made her upset. And she just really kind of, in the South, we would say bowed up on me. Yeah. And I was like, I hadn't seen that side of her in our 3-month relationship. And I kind of looked at her and she's going, she shows her claws a little bit. I just started laughing. I'm like, no, you didn't just do that to me. Like, that's the greatest thing ever. And I just started laughing and I made humor of it. And immediately she just went, oh, babe, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, I love it. I love it when you're like, hey, I didn't like that. And so I'm going to push back a little bit on that. But the humor just took the volume of the conversation way down.
Yeah, I love that. And what you said highlights a point is often the feminine creatures don't actually want to be all fired up like that. They don't want to be emotionally chaotic and losing it and attacking you. And so your ability to bring her back, whether it's through humor or just co-regulating and grounding her, they don't want to be like that. That's what they look to us for. And that's one of the things that I never understood in the marriage. I always thought I had to fix or avoid. She wants me to help ground her and co-regulate her. And that was a powerful realization for me.
One of the things that's been huge, obviously, a little bit of my journey over the last 6 to 8 months has been, and I just want to encourage everybody out there. Listen, if I ever talk to anybody every marriage relationships are hard. They're difficult. You want to go lose weight, you got to go to the gym and work out. It's the same thing in a relationship. Business, you're going to have to put in the work. I tell them, I take them straight to your book. I'm like, you've got to listen to this book. I think the number one thing for guys, and I know we're talking about this on the daily embodiment practice, is you as a man have to do your own work, somatic work on your own central nervous system, on who you are, past traumas, experiences, growing up, childhood, teenage, growing up, so that when she does that, you don't automatically take it as, oh, well, I didn't do anything wrong. Why is she doing this? And then you react versus respond. So I would love to talk a little bit about the work. You know, we're talking about the empathy, the curiosity, the humor, the things we can do when they come at us. What are some things, GS, that you've seen or that men could do? They listen to this podcast today. They can walk away with some tools to do some daily work.
You mean a daily embodiment practice?
Yes, yeah, daily embodiment practice. What are some actual things they can put feet on the ground tomorrow and work on?
Yeah. Okay. So I wish I could give a short answer, and I'll do my best to condense this, but there's a lot to it. I think I have to explain embodiment a little bit first to answer that question. Yeah. So most of us, our awareness rests largely on our thinking mind. You know, we're analyzing data all day, we're consuming content and posts and emails and messages, and we live with a tsunami of information that we have to process, and any muscle that you use all day long, it's going to get strong as hell. And so your analytical mind is probably the biggest muscle in your body, so to speak, because you're using it way more than you use anything else, unless you work in construction. If you're any kind of knowledge worker, then you are using your analytical mind. And the problem is, our analytical mind in the relational space can often betray us, because what it'll do is the analytical mind will create, people will act a certain way and we don't understand why she's all upset. And so our mind invents stories to explain to ourselves and make sense of her behavior as best we can. And usually it's in the form of like, she's just being a colossal bitch. Like that's one of the stories that we make up. Like she's in a bad mood, and then we treat her as if that were true. And so we treat her as if somebody who's being kind of a colossal bitch, which is usually not treating her very well. So the mind creates all kinds of stories and projections, and at some point you start to believe all that, and you just live your life as if all that's true. And what you're missing now is a direct experience of actually what's really happening right in front of you, rather than the 4 movies that you overlay onto the present moment. So embodiment, so our attention naturally rests there. So a lot of men's work is awareness training. So it's about taking that awareness, and you got to have some on your thinking mind in the outside world, but taking another portion of that and bringing it down into sensation in the body. And why would you do that? Because sensation only happens now in this moment. See, thoughts are always, as you know, about the present, about the future and the past. Sensation only happens now. So when you have some of your awareness on sensation in the body, it actually pulls you into the present moment. You actually naturally think less, you ruminate less, and you're more in the now. And so what we're doing is training the body we're training our awareness to rest in the body, and also in this relational space with the outside world that we still have to interact with. So much of the embodiment work that I do is around training your awareness to get into your body. So I'm going to give you a very simple way to do that, because you asked for some simple things that they can do. So I have a very core principle that I teach called split attention. And basically what that is taking 50% of your attention and directing it downward so you can feel the places where you contact the chair and the floor beneath you. I call those gravity points. And gravity is pulling you down and pressing you into those contact points. And there's a sensation there, right? So as you look at me, Ken, just actually let your awareness drop down to your butt in the chair. And even if you need to wiggle it a little bit just to kind of bring it up in your awareness, and then come to stillness. And now just feel gravity pulling you down, and just feel that. Don't think about it or picture it in your mind. Actually simply feel it without words, without labels. And see if you can surrender into that gravity just a little bit. so that you become like 1 pound heavier. Okay, so keep that connection to this. It's a sensation. It's a sensation of weight. So keep that. And now, but keep 50% of your attention with me, which is what you've been doing. You've been listening to me. You can see me. So you and I are in a relational space right now as we're conversing. But see if you can actually feel the weight of your body pressing into the chair while you're with me, while you're very present with me. And just stay with me. This is just, it's going to feel a lot of very much wax on, wax off. So we're just practicing the fundamentals here. And this is a practice that I do almost, I wouldn't even say every day, I'd say every, on a minute by minute basis. If I'm sitting in a chair, if I'm walking, I can always feel myself pressing down into the, via gravity. And I tune into that sensation, and then I hold that awareness while I relate with other people. So this is both a practice. So I'll sit, I'm on my cushion and I'm in lotus position, and I'm practicing. I'll often use a candle to externalize, and then I'll practice just feeling my weight, and I'll practice feeling those at the same time. But then this is also a technique. It's not just a practice that you do offline. It's a technique. So when my woman's fired up at me, I will invariably drop some awareness down to my gravity point. So if we're on the couch together, I'll do it on my butt. If I'm standing, I do it down to my feet. And what happens is it immediately grounds me. Like it works like that. And it takes some of my awareness away from my thinking, reactive mind, my informational mind, my defensive mind. And it just kind of pushes that out as it then replaces it with awareness of sensation in the moment. And then I still have some awareness left over to be in the relational space. So I can still have a conversation with her. It's not like I'm just going numb and like, going into a meditative state and ignoring her. So that's an easy practice. You can sit on your couch and do that for 5 minutes a day with a candle. And then when next time you're in a fight with your woman, just do it in the moment. And that's an easy practice that is actually very, very powerful. But I'll just pause there for a second. I know I talked a lot.
No, I love that. And I'm literally doing it now. The somatic therapy is something I've been doing for a few months. I think for most men, like even when they hear these things, they want to do it. They just don't, just even that simple exercise you just gave, like I can still feel like, it's funny now, my therapist, Lauren, I do my podcast with my shoes off now.
Yeah.
So I can feel my feet on the ground.
Yeah, there you go.
And when you said something just a minute ago, so if I get, cause I'm all over the place, dude, my mind goes 1,000 miles an hour. So what I've learned is when I get in here with no shoes on, it's the exact same exercise. I can feel my feet on the floor, on my hardwood floors. I can feel that. Still be engaged, and it really regulates my central nervous system there.
Yeah.
What are some other daily embodiment practices that you do yourself? Or let me say this, and they may still be the same now as they were after your divorce and you were in the process of discovering and all those things, but what are some other things that you did to help you really ground, to keep your central nervous system from, those triggers as you talk about and a lot of other people talk about in their book?
Yeah, we talked a lot about awareness training. I think that was part and parcel of what I just described. One of the other, there's two kind of primary principles in the book, the second book, attention and intention. So we want to be able to direct our awareness where we want it to go. That's the attention part. Intention is we want moment to moment to live out of choice rather than habit or reactivity. So I have exercises that I do to really build that muscle of intention. And you can really, you can see men who operate like this. They operate reactively, or you can see even just like the way they might look over at the door as maybe somebody comes through the door. They're very intentional in how they do things moment to moment. And so I have lots of practices that I use to really, what I try to do is break down the automation and the outsourcing that we've created for ourselves. And what I mean by that is habit is a way to outsource, the thinking mind. Like I don't have to think about it. I just operate out of habit. Reactivity is another way that we don't live out of intention. It's just the body-mind's way of protecting us through habit and what it thinks will protect our ego or our physical body or anything like that. So there's little moments where you could either do something out of your conscious mind or you do it out of your subconscious. And what I want to do is I want to break down that moment and break it apart so you no longer go down the subconscious habitual route. And you can do that in the simplest of things. I'll give you the simplest exercise. I mean, there's others that are more complex. But I want to give the simple one here for this conversation. Even if you just take a breath, so maybe through the lips, and so it's. Now I'm going to pause, and my natural autonomic habit would be to then pretty much quickly turn around and just do an exhale. But I'm going to pause. No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Okay, now I'm ready. Now I choose to start the exhale. Now I'm choosing to continue the exhale, actually consciously choosing to continue it. Continue. And now I'm going to choose to slow and stop, just shy of my empty. So it's still a choice. And now I'm going to pause again. Okay, now I'm ready. And so I'm choosing to start the breath, both in and out breath. I'm choosing to continue it moment to moment because my awareness is on it. I'm not letting the subconscious just run the whole thing. I mean, there's a way that I could do that. I could say, okay, I'm going to breathe in and out. Now I'm going to outsource this to my subconscious and I'll think about baseball. We don't want to do that. We want to break down that subcontracting, so to speak, and do it in the simplest thing of the breath. And you'll be actually amazed. Even that simple breath where you don't start and stop until you make the conscious choice and then you go. That exercise by itself can actually start to build that muscle of intention. And what's going to happen is you're going to move a little more slowly. You're going to speak a little bit more slowly. You're going to respond a little bit more slowly because there's going to be choice points in there rather than just habit. So this is the simplest of exercises that I do in my own practice and that of my clients to build this muscle of intention.
I love that. One of the things in your book that raised in a difficult, I was raised in a very difficult childhood situation, physically abusive, verbally abusive. You said this, and this is out of chapter 9 in your book on emotions. And you said this is some notes that I took in my Audible app. Rather than suppress anger, welcome it in with gratitude, as it shows you a powerful reminder of what is important to you. Anger is clarifying.
Yeah.
It's trying to point you to something. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was fascinating to me. Because you always hear anger is bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, anger is our friend. It tells us what's important. It tells us where we need to really step up and rise up, and it alerts us something is being threatened here. What is that something? And if you can get beyond the anger itself and say, okay, what's being threatened? Address that, because quite frankly, anger usually sits on top of another emotion. It's either shame, it's usually fear. And shame is a form of fear. It's a fear of being found out, for your inadequate self, at least in your mind. It could be grief. Anger almost always covers up something else. So use anger as your ally. Something's important here. I'm not going to just roll over, and I'm not going to also explode in this anger. I'm going to actually see what it's telling me. And yeah, I give examples in the book, and you get angry at your woman because maybe she makes kind of a condescending remark to you about how much money you make or something like that. And you get angry because you say she's being such a bitch. But really what's going on, it's like, yeah, baby, that actually hurts. That actually hurts. What's being threatened is my sense of self because you're telling me somehow I'm inadequate, which is a very hard message for men to hear. So instead of just actually feeling the hurt and saying, baby, ouch, we get angry at her because we get angry because we feel helpless. We feel helpless against her, stated opinion that maybe we're not making enough money. We feel our inadequacy, or at least perceived inadequacy. So yeah, anger can really be an ally, and if you can then use it to identify what's important and what you need and then add clear communication. Like, wait a minute, baby, what I know is important to me is that we don't talk to each other like that. So I feel my anger right now, and I'm not willing to be in a relationship where we make those cutting remarks to each other. Are you with me on this one? Would you be willing to commit to that, to really treating each other with respect? Because this is not okay. Like, that's a powerful, solid, clear way to set boundaries or to state your needs and to state that you're not going to live without them. So much better than just blasting her with your anger.
I love a couple of the notes I took on that specific thing is it almost always, you said this a little bit, reveals a fear, but I also put in here one of the things you talked about, almost always reveals a need from your woman. And you said, allow the energy of your anger to spur you into action. Mm-hmm. I love that. Allow the energy of you, use that energy. Because again, we're always, most of all, we're taught that anger is bad. It's not good, but allowing to use the energy from that to, like you said, dig and really spur you into action.
Yeah, because the you know what the opposite of that is staying quiet and getting resentful, which is what most people do. We stay quiet and then we get resentful. And then not only are we angry at her, we're actually angry at ourselves for being such a wuss about it. And then we channel that anger to double up onto her, even more so. So yeah, let it spur you into action and taking care of in life what's not okay. Whether it's from a man, a woman, a business partner, a guy on the street, it doesn't matter. Use that energy.
The one thing I'm finding out at 54 years old is, and again, we've had this conversation, Roy and I have, if you've never been in a relationship where you can really express, or I said something to my therapist. I said, well, I didn't want to say this to her because I didn't want to put more pressure on her than she already has. Mm-hmm. I said, Ken, that's a trauma response. And I went, well, how is that a trauma response? Because you want to carry something when you have a need in a relationship, you need to be able to share that need with your partner. Yeah. Talk about some tools or some ways, GS, to be able to share with your partner that aren't necessarily maybe attacking, or ways they won't take those and they won't get defensive, but they're open to being able to hear what you say. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of guys wonder, like, do I need to be in touch with my emotions? And is that going to make me less masculine? And what I always say, it's not being in touch with your emotions and needs. It's how you present it. And when you present it that she's got to do something for you to feel okay, that's needy. That's needy, and that's not going to work. But if you can state your needs clearly, it actually is a very masculine way to share at that emotional level. And I borrow from a modality called nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg. I modify it slightly. But what I have guys do is really state an observation. So it's what did I hear with my ears and see with my eyes. So baby, when you said X, which is indisputable, it's just a statement of what I observed. Mm-hmm. When you said X, I actually felt, so when you made that quip about how much money I made, actually that hurt. That hurt. So that's impact. So that's the second part. So there's observation and then there's impact. And you notice I made it very short and sweet. Mm-hmm. Underneath that is all the emotion that I got in touch with, but I don't burden her with that and make stories about it and blah, blah, blah. I just say, yeah, that actually hurt, baby. So there's impact. So you share impact, something that is such a powerful technique. Just share the impact of other people's behavior on you. And then there's desire or request. And so, baby, what I'm wanting is a relationship where we don't use cutting remarks as a way to get what we want. Would you be up for that, to commit to that? So that you're either stating what you desire or you're making a specific request of her. That's how I do it. And you just keep it short and sweet. It's a few sentences. Observation, impact, request, or desire.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's very powerful, and it's a very masculine way to not only express your emotions, which is what your woman's dying from you. This is why so many women don't feel connected at the emotional level with their men, because their men never share anything about what's going on inside. We're always fine. And we think that's a virtue. It's not a virtue. I mean, what's a virtue is to be able to hold a container for your own emotions, but not be oblivious to them. Because if you're oblivious, they're just going to run you. And your woman's going to feel it. And she's going to be like, dude, you are resentful. Stop denying that you are. I can feel it. Right. So this is very powerful work that I think all men need to undertake.
One of the things that I realized for me was when I had a situation, just pulling back or pulling away. Mm-hmm. I'm good. Pulling away. It's learning how to then, because again, we had this conversation a couple weeks ago. We went for Christmas, New Year's. We went to DC. Well, she lives in DC. Went to DC, stayed at the Ritz for a few days. And in one of our conversations, I told her, I said, I've never been in a relationship where I could have this kind of a conversation. What would you say to encourage some men who are in a marriage or in a long-term relationship that feel, I've got two therapists. I don't have one, I have two. Plus I'm reading your books and I'm doing a lot of work. But what would you say to some guys to encourage them, GS, to have those conversations in a way that will help them in their relationship?
Yeah, what I would say is that in so many cases, and not all, because there's lots of different circumstances, but in so many cases, it is absolutely going to soften your woman when you start to share and stop going with that, I'm fine. Because what happens when you back off and it's I'm fine, you're resentful. And that is one of the biggest killers of relationship is resentment. And man, I've been through it myself with my woman. And she pulled me out of that hiding that I was doing. And it was killing our relationship for a while there. And so what I'd say is guys, just all your woman wants is to know your emotional state so she knows how to orient around that emotional state. So all you have to do is just share a little bit of what's going on inside of you, and you will be shocked. If you don't do it in a needy way and you're not doing it in a blaming way, it's just a kind of a statement of what's going on inside, you will be shocked at how much this opens your woman and makes her feel more open to you. And just let's speak in a language guys can resonate with. And when your woman is more open to you and her heart is more open, guess what's also more open to? Yes. Her body. She's going to open her body more to you when her heart is open to you. And part of creating that heart connection is sharing and showing a little bit of what's on your inside so that she knows how to orient around you. Because absent that, you're an opaque stone, and her nervous system just goes haywire because it doesn't know how to orient relative to your nervous system. Like her nervous system is always impacted by yours. Ours is not quite as much, but hers is always impacted. So when you're a stone, an opaque stone that she can't understand or see into, it starts to go haywire here. And this comes out as irritability, criticism, and all other kinds of negative things. So it's such a simple technique, Ken, to just show a little bit of yourself or what's going on inside. And you'll be shocked.
One of the things that I learned just in this past week was I made a commitment. I said, listen, I make a commitment to you. Almost exactly what you said earlier. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make a commitment to you to never pull back or never feel withdrawn if I feel hurt.
Yeah,
I'm going, and again, it's at 50. I wonder sometimes, how am I just learning this at 53 and 54 years old? Like, where has this been? But I made a commitment to her. Hey, listen, I'm going to make a commitment to you that I will never pull back from you again. I'm making that commitment. I will step forward and say, hey, babe, when you said this, I felt this. Exactly how you talked about earlier.
Love it.
So we can begin to have that conversation. And you said, when your heart is open and your woman's heart is open, she'll open her body, and which just takes the relationship to another level. Yeah.
It's amazing how relationships that seem just unfixable, like there's just this chronic irritability on her side and then chronic resentment and defensiveness on the other side. These things can be recovered. These things can be recovered if you learn to bring more and create more heart connection. Take a little emotional leadership is what I say to guys. Okay, we have such a history of being so passive around the emotional structure of the relationship. Take some proactive emotional leadership, guys. And I teach them how to do that.
I love that. GS, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Get on my website and get onto the mailing list, gsyoungblood.com. Certainly follow me on Instagram, gsyoungbloodmir, which is masculine in relationship. Or feel free to reach out via email, gs@gsyoungblood.com.
And guys, I would encourage you, every man and woman out there, and I've even told ladies who are looking for a relationship, you have got to read this book, The Masculine Relationship, guys. You know, in my journey over the past several months has just been another game-changing moment for me to understand and go, okay, I get this now. This makes sense. And it's not only the head knowledge and the understanding. GS, I've really been able to put a lot of this stuff into practice. And it works. It literally works. Yeah. So I want to say a huge shout out to you, dude, for your work. And I think one of the reasons it resonates with people so deeply is because it came from a source and a place of pain in your past, and you did the work to be able to figure out why. Yeah. Now I've got this, and now, guys, obviously in these two books, in The Masculine Relationship, the one I read it I went through it twice in 2 weeks. I don't read any book twice ever, let alone twice in 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. Whatever it was. Well, dude, thank you so much for connecting with us. Guys, listen, go get the book, go hop on his website, connect with GS. His stuff is absolutely a game changer for any of you in a relationship, or if you want to be in a relationship, men and women. You've got to download this book and read this book.
Yeah, and Ken, let me just add one more thing. This work is more than just the relationship itself. I take it out into the dark sexual energy, which is a workshop that I've got coming up in March. So that's kind of one thrust that they take it in. The other is the business world. I mean, I came out of the business world. And so everything that we're talking about here around grounding and being more relational, it absolutely plays in business as well. And so I work on guys around, and women too, around their embodied executive presence, so that they can be more successful in their business using these principles of embodiment. So there's just so many ways to apply this type of work.
I love that. Guys, again, GS Youngblood, go check him out on his website, his book. He's been one of the main reasons over the past 6 months, just in transforming my own heart and my own life and understanding what that looks like to be in the masculine relationship. GS, thank you for joining us today, my friend.
Thanks, brother.
Hey, guys, thank you for joining us on the As the Leader Grows podcast. Again, we're going to drop this in January, at the end of January, 26th through the 28th in Atlanta. Join myself, good friends like John Maxwell, Ed Milet, Amberly Lago, Randy Garn, Anthony Trucks, Carlos Reyes. The list goes on and on and on of amazing people as we spend 2.5 days, the #1 entrepreneur conference in the Southeast, growstackdrive.com/create. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next episode.